In the 1980s, South Africa was on the verge of a bloody civil war. While whites were just a fraction of the population, they owned 90% of the land, and apartheid, institutionalized discrimination, was the law of the land. Amid this turmoil, President Reagan appointed a career diplomat to be our country's first black ambassador to South Africa. In an Oklahoma profile, our Jessica Lowe sat down with Edward Perkins as he remembers a time that changed history.
It was a time when hatred towards black South Africans was the law. And a black ambassador to the land of apartheid was unheard of.
Secretary called, and he said that he and the president had decided that it was time to send a black ambassador. He said, I've been asking for the people who would be eligible, and every time I ask for a list, your name is on it.
Although Perkins had a military and diplomatic background, he didn't answer right away. But after a heart-to-heart discussion with his wife, Lucy,
and she said, well, look, you took the oath of office to go where needed, when needed. Maybe this is the time.
Perkins accepted the challenge.
It was all a contentious time. Every day that me and my colleagues were there, the younger black Africans, the leaders, the young leaders, were both very interesting and very contentious. They, perhaps more than the elders, were determined that I was up to no good, that I was there to sell them out.
And he says stepping up to South African President P.W. Botha made an already bad situation worse.
It was an experience that I never hope to repeat. Here was a man who exhibited all hate. It was quite apparent that he felt insulted by having our country send a black to represent it. He clearly intended to look down on me in a kind of a superior, inferior stance. And he found himself looking into my eyes and I looking into his. Both of us silent and determined not to avert eyes. He clearly intended to intimidate me at that first meeting, and I was not going to be intimidated.
How did you deal with that? Were you ever really afraid for your life?
Yes, I was. Mostly for members of the family. I was certainly afraid for them, but I was also concerned about my own life.
Were the Africans receptive to you as a black ambassador?
They were very skeptical, and then after I'd been there 2 weeks, they knew that I was going to try and make change. And they had no reason to consider me a friend unless they listened to what I had to say, which was, the president has asked me to try and prevent a race war taking place in South Africa. He said, if there is a race war, no one will win, least of all you. He said, there are 35 million blacks and 8 million of you. You can't win.
Perkins spent a long 3 years in South Africa, and looking back, his time and effort, well spent.
When I left South Africa, they came by the embassy and delivered a letter saying how proud they were that I had come and that I had been the instrument that the United States used to try and make a difference there.
Making a difference in South Africa, but also in his own life.
I certainly have a different regard for human beings. After a while, color seems to disappear and humanity comes in. And I think all of us, regardless of where we come from, are beginning to realize that my destiny is kind of tied up with yours in terms of the success of this great experiment that our founding fathers wrote down. Although they weren't talking about you and me when they wrote it. Nevertheless, in the course of time, in order for it to be possible, you and I have to be talked about.
A discussion of freedom and hope. This American pioneer is dedicating his entire life to it, breaking barriers and building endless possibilities, impacting lives forever.